today, Tzadik Gimel, Amud Aleph, the last three words of the page. Okay, it starts Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, Gidud Chamisha Umachitza Chamisha. That means that there's a difference in the topography, in the in the way the land is between one chatzar and another, 5 tvachim. But in order for it to be separated, it needs to be 10 tvachim. So they built another wall of 5 tvachim in between the two areas. So it's 5 based on the land, the way the land is, and then there's another one, another 5 tvachim that goes up. So Rav Chisda says, "Ein mitzdarfen." It doesn't help. Either it's entirely just the land difference, or if it's entirely a machitza.
It's like a natural land step.
Right, a step. The Gemara is a little surprised by this because we learned differently. The Gemara says, "Meisvei, 1 second. If you have 2 courtyards, one above the other, and the upper one is 10 tefachim higher. Or if you have exactly this case, 5 tefachim and the difference in the land, and you put up a fence of 5 tefachim. It's considered separated. It's not exactly the opposite of what Rav Chisda told us. So, and then it goes on. If it's less than 5 tvachim, the mechitza. So then it's already considered one area.
Why would it say Marvin Stein and Marvin Echad?
Marvin Stein and Marvin Echad means that they're separated in a way that there's no wall, there's no door between them. And so therefore each chatzar needs its own Eruv. In Marvin Echad, you can't make one Eruv for both chatzeres. When can you make one Eruv for both chatzeres? That's only if there's a doorway. But here you made such a good wall that you have 5 tvachim from here and 5 tvachim from the mechitza. So it's Ma'arvin Shnayim. That Ma'arvin Shnayim means Kol Echad Ma'arv Latzmei. Each one needs to have its own Eruv. Bei Ma'arvin Echad, you can't have one joint Eruv for everyone. If it's less than 5 tvachim, then it works the other way. Then Ma'arvin Echad, then it's considered one big area, and you can't make in one chutzner. You can't make in one chutzner an Eruv just for these people. Clicks in the classroom. You can't do that. It has to be.
Meaning that it's not a wall.
Yeah, it's not a wall. That's what it would mean if it's less than that. So now we have a question. The question is that Rav Chisda told us that a half of the wall, which is made because of the difference in the land. What is that called? Relief? What is it called?
If it's meaning that it's like 4 and 4 or something, right? Is that what it's saying? If it's like if the Kiddush is 4 and the Mechitza is 4, whatever the story is,
right?
Less than.
Then it says
a bigger outer room with 2 levels in it.
Right.
Right. So you're saying that one family lives on this level and one family lives on this level.
Yeah, it's a little more. It's several families on this level, several families on this level. Each of them needed to make an Eruv, but now because of it's too close, there's not enough of a wall, so there needs to be one Eruv.
But isn't it like just one big room?
Yeah, that's why it needs one Eruv.
Why do they even need?
Because there's more than one family in each courtyard. There's 2 courtyards. Each one has a complex. Yeah. Each one has a complex, several houses. In order to carry in the common area from the houses, you needs an Eruv. Over here, because there's no wall, and not enough of a wall, then it needs to be one Eruv for everyone. Okay. So the question is that Rav Chisda didn't say that. So Amar, maybe it's Rava. On the side it fixes it to Rava. Rava was a son-in-law of Rav Chisda, a student as well. Amar Rava Maida Rav Chisda b'tachtaina hayol v'raya pnei asara. This is very interesting. Rav Chisda agrees that the lower one works. The lower one has a full wall. It's the upper one that doesn't have the wall. which is correct. I mean, he has 10 tvachim, the other one only has 5 tvachim. But what about the drop? Well, it depends how you look at it. Depends how you look at it. From the lower one perspective, he has a full wall. From the upper perspective, he doesn't have a full wall. The Gemara says, 1 second. Ihachi, if that's the case, so tachtaina ta'ariv shnayim. Shnayim is a misleading word, but what it means to say is ta'ariv la'atzma. The lower one needs to have its own Eruv, okay? V'loy ta'ariv echad, and it cannot make one Eruv. But al yaina, but the upper one, it's not going to fit with the brisa. You're resolving something, but it's not going to fit entirely, because according to the brisa, if there was a wall there, ma'ariv shnayim, both the lower one and the upper one have separate eruvin. But according to Rav Chisda, that he's only maided that the lower one has a wall, it's going to come out as you're right about the lower one. The lower one has its own eruv, but the upper one cannot have any eruv, not joined with the bottom one, and not its own eruv. Why? It can't have one eruv with the bottom one because there's no door, and the lower one can't get in. It can't have 2 eruvin because it doesn't have a mechitza. A mechitza is 10 tvachim. So the low one is in a fix, and now the fix is self contradictory.
Well,
Because on one hand it doesn't have a door, on the other hand it doesn't have a wall. It's a self-contradictory problem, but the Gemara is asking that it's an irresolvable issue. So it doesn't have a door for the lower one to get into it to make an eruv with the lower one, and it doesn't have a wall to make an independent for itself to make. Amar, okay, that's a question on Rav Chisda. We're back with the problem. Amar Rabba Bar Ulak Ganshei Salyena Megufefes Ad Eser Ames. We have a pshat. Pshat goes like this: that the upper one had gifufe. It had partially. Here, let's go like this. Looking for a way to describe this. We have 2 courtyards, right? Yeah, let's go like this. I have the upper one and the lower one. So the upper one is really slightly larger than the lower one, okay? And so you automatically have the wall over here. So it anyways has a wall. The whole shaila was, is this considered a wall as well? So it has gifufe, so we're not worried about it. What does that tell us? That means that the gifufe tells me that it can make its own eruv because it has a wall there. In other words, the lower one, see, so why do I need the mechitza b'chlal if it's gifufe? I need the mechitza because the lower one doesn't have gifufe. But so what? The lower one has 10 tvachim. The upper one doesn't have 10 tvachim, but so what? It has gifufe.
Right.
It has the part over here that's.
So they both should be able to.
So they both be able to, and that's the pshat in the brisa why ma'ariv shnayim. Okay, it looks good. We resolved it. The Gemara says 1 second. So far so good until you read further in the brisa. It says yihachi em seifa. Pachis mikan. If it's less than that means if it's less than 5 tvachim in the mechitza, then we're 1 big mechitza. Marvin echad ve'im marvin shnayim. 1 second. What do you mean marvin echad? Iboy chad tarv, iboy trei tarv. It's not marvin echad. You have gefufe. What about the bottom one? The upper one could be ma'ariv echad. So, but we do have a problem. Iboy chad tarv, iboy trei tarv. So, I've been learning it with the Gemara's answer. According to the Gemara right here, it's not wider. The upper one isn't wider. So there's gifufe on both sides. There's gifufe for the lower one and the upper one. The Gemara soon is going to say what I said, that there's only gifufe for the upper one. So
This picture might be helpful.
So what do we have here? The upper one and the lower one. Okay. So there's gifufe on the upper one. It's gifufe for the lower one. Yeah, that's how we're starting. We're starting. Okay, this is going to be hard to see on the camera, but we're starting with there's gifufe for both sides, and that's why the Gemara has the question that if it's less than 5 tvachim, what's the problem? Dr. Stein's picture is good. How did you get that out? Oh, that's from the color. So, okay, the Gemara says, but if there's gifufe, then why can't you make 2 Eiruvin? One for each one, because there's really a partial wall for both sides, the top and the bottom. So Amar Rabba Breder Rava Kain Shnifza Tachteina B'Melua Lel Yaina, the way we explained it, that the lower one doesn't have gifufe. The lower one is more narrow, so it doesn't have those protruding walls from the sides. So Iachi Tachteina Chad Ta'ariv Trei Lei Ta'ariv, but Al Yaina Yibai Trei Ta'ariv Yibai Chad Ta'ariv. Back to the question that we said. I get it. The upper one has a full wall, has a wall with a doorway. So they can make 2 Eiruvin. 2 Eiruvin means its own Eiruv. Mitariv Latzma, right? That's called Mariv Shnayim. It makes its own Eiruv. But the lower one is only going to be able to make 1 Eiruv. So why didn't the Brisa say that? The Gemara says, you're right. Enachanami, you're right. We weren't talking about the upper one. You're right, the upper one can make a separate Eiruv if they want to ignore the bottom one and leave it in the dark, leave it that they can't carry from the houses to the chutzner on Shabbos. They could make their own Eruv. The bottom one can't make its own Eruv because the bottom one goes directly in without any protrusions on the side, directly into the upper one. There's no wall of 10 tefachim there. There's a 5 in the relief, but there's 4, let's say, in the mechitza. So it can't make a separate Eruv from the upper one because it doesn't have any wall at all. 9 tvachim is in the wall. Okay, Darish Mareimar, Gidud Chamisha, Mechitza Chamisha Mitzdarfen. Mareimar taught that it does work. If you have half and half in the relief and half in the Mechitza, it combines. Ashkechei Ravina L'Ravacha Breiderava. Ravina found Ravacha Breiderava Amarle. The Bach adjusts some things over here. But basically, he asks them, Tanimar Midi B'Mechitza, did Amemar teach anything about Mechitza? Amalei, he didn't teach anything. V'hilchas Gidud Chamisha Mechitza Chamisha Mitzdaref. But however, the halacha is that it's Mitzdaref. Okay. Boy Rav Aishia. Rav Aishia has a question. The Yurin Haboim B'Shabbos Mao Sheyasru. We've discussed this before on many different angles. If dwellers come on Shabbos, now what the Gemara is really asking here is if a wall collapses on Shabbos, and I made originally an Eruv for this chutzner, I made an Eruv for that chutzner, but the dividing wall fell down, and now really it would require one big Eruv, one Eruv for both of them together, but I didn't do that. I made separate Eruvim. So now it really doesn't work. If I would try to make an Eruv like this, just with this area of a chutzner and that area of one chutzner, it's not going to work. I need to be the whole chutzner joined together, and now there's no wall. So what happens on Shabbos? Amar Rav Chizda Tashma. Is it Rav Chizda? What's the base over here? Amar Rav Chinena Tashma. Come and listen. The assumption here is that there's a wall that's collapsing on Shabbos. There's a large courtyard that's opened into a smaller courtyard. That means that there's new dwellers that come on Shabbos. The new dwellers is because the Mechitza collapsed.
I was waiting for you to say some guests came down. I'm waiting for the people that came. I got it. So the wall came down.
The wall came down, which makes new guests. We have guests.
Beautiful way of saying it.
Right. So, Tashema. A large courtyard that gets opened, or the wall gets broken down into the smaller courtyard. We think it's on Shabbos. Hagdayla Muteres. The larger courtyard could be used. Why? Because gifufe, like we always said, it really has 4 walls. It just has an entrance. And vaktana asura, but the lower, but the not the lower, the smaller one is asur. Why? Because it's open entirely into the larger one. It doesn't have any gifufe. Because it's the entranceway. It's like the doorway of the larger one, and there's nothing stopping that entrance. Seems like we have a proof that if it falls down on Shabbos, if it's entirely opened, it's going to be a problem. Amar Rabba, how do you know it fell down on Shabbos? How do you know what the Bryce was talking about? Could be it fell down before Shabbos. If it would have fallen down on Shabbos, maybe it's all fine, because there's a svara to say mitaych shehutra, because it was mutter when Shabbos came in, it continues to stay mutter even afterward. That's a svara. How do you know that it's negating that svara? Maybe really if it falls on Shabbos, it's going to be mutter, because when Shabbos came in, everything was acceptable. And now there's an issue because it fell down before Shabbos. And so we're saying how it works. So Amar le Abaya says, Leitem amar Amar, elavada mi ba'inyan nifritza. Don't even say that as a suggestion. Amar, say, or let's say. Vada mi ba'inyan nifritza. The Bryce is clearly talking about that it fell down before Shabbos. The maru damar, because Rabbah is usually mar. When Abaya talks about Rabbah, he says mar. Rabbah was his teacher. Maru Amar, boy my name Rav Huna, that they asked from Rav Huna, boy my name Rav Yehuda, and they asked from Rav Yehuda. Those are 2 students of Rav. Eruv derech HaPesach, if they made an Eruv through a doorway, that means that there was an opening for 2 courtyards to join. V'nistam HaPesach, and something collapsed on Shabbos, and the doorway got blocked. So now it's 2 separate courtyards. So they made 1 Eruv, and now it's 2 courtyards. 2 courtyards requires 2 Eiruvin if there's no doorway. If there's a doorway, then you have the option. But here there's no doorway. So Eruv derech hachalain v'nistam hachalain, the same thing happens. There wasn't a doorway, there was a window that went through, but that was good enough. And now the window got blocked. Something collapsed and it's not there. So, right. So Ma, what's the din? Va'amar li, and he said to me, Shabbos given shehutra, mitaych or hayel. Once it was permissible for the beginning of Shabbos, it remains permissible the whole Shabbos. So you can't say that it was Amar, that maybe it was before Shabbos. It was Vadai before Shabbos. And because if it would happen on Shabbos, then I wouldn't have any of these issues. It would be automatically permissible. Itzmar. We have a statement. Okay, so that one was slugged out. Yeah, so that one with the question of the urine haboim b'Shabbos, Rabbi Ishia's question, Ma'ashi Yasru, according to Rabbah, it's not a problem because once Shabbos comes in, it was permissible, it remains permissible. Kaisel shebein stei chatzeres shenafal. 2 courtyards, each one made a separate Eruv because there's a wall between, and now the wall collapsed.
They got new guys.
All right.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Question. I have a question. When the Eruv message comes out on Erev Shabbos, lately, the last few weeks, there was a question whether it was kosher or not because of construction winds. In the end, Baruch Hashem, it always said the Eruv is kosher, all right? And that's where you have the cheskes kashrus system. But
Right.
then there was this kind of disclaimer, but if winds are up above 35 miles, the Eruv may be down. So now you're throwing me off. If we're going with cheskes kashrus, why would you need a disclaimer?
Yeah. Now let me repeat the question. Dr. Stein is asking like this: that there's an announcement there of Shabbos that the Eruv is kosher, but then they say there's a disclaimer that if the winds go over 35 miles per hour, then you can't rely on that. So the problem is that we're saying that if it's kosher before Shabbos, it remains kosher. So what's that disclaimer? It should be automatically kosher. The pshat is like this. There's 2 parts to Eiruvin. One part is the actual wall that it's surrounded by a wall. And that could be a string, and that could be, there's different types of making it. There's another thing that I need to join food together for this area. So what we did over here is that everyone joined food. They put it, I think, in what's the show? The Young Israel or Shai Tefillah. There's food, the box of matzah there from Pesach to Pesach, and that's the food that's there. Now,
Where is it? Just to know.
under the
Just get
beamer.
hungry.
I don't know. So so you see, the whole North Miami Beach is surrounded by a wall. If the wall comes down, that's a problem. That's a problem. Here we're not talking about that the wall is coming down. Yes, a wall is coming down, but it's surrounded by a wall, another wall. Here our question is, these people joined in with food separately. So now, and now the wall comes down, and now it becomes one courtyard. So is that going to work? As let's say, I don't know, what's it called, the area nearby, the other Eruv, Skylake. Let's say the Eruv between Skylake and us comes down, and we've divided, we have separate food. So can we say that we're automatically one? That's what we're saying. We can't say that we're automatically one because we've each contributed food separately. You follow? So there's a difference between the wall coming down. Yes, it's another wall coming down, but it's not the wall that makes us walled in. It's the wall that divides us from the other tenants. So that's what's happening. So do we become one large group, and now we're in trouble because we didn't put the food together? Or do we have our separate Eiruvin that we've given? And we're anyway surrounded by a wall. And in Mitech Shehutra, once it was when Shabbos came in, we were separated. We remained as separated as before. Okay, so Rav says that when that happens, it's clear, Dr. Stein? Okay, so Rav Amar ein metalton by el bedal ramas. Rav doesn't hold of Mitech Shehutra or Hayel Behutra. He doesn't say that because Shabbos came in and you were separated, so now you remain separate. Yeah, he says what happens is when the wall comes down, now you're in trouble, and you don't have the proper Eruv. You can only carry within 4 amas. What do you want to carry? So there's a very important Rashi on the bottom. Rashi's dealing with an issue. Rav says, Rav Paskan like Reb Shimon, that all courtyards are one, and you can really carry from courtyard to courtyard anyway. So what's the issue over here? So Rav says, what we're saying over here is, if you never made an Eruv, you would resolve part of the issue. The problem is that you made an Eruv. Once you make the Eruv, Rav held that once you make the Eruv, then you can remove items from your house into the courtyard. There was a concern, according to Rav, that if you can remove items from the house into the courtyard, you may end up carrying those household items into another courtyard, which that wasn't allowed. So therefore, you're not allowed to carry it all. In other words, the Eruv that you made separately is what's really messing this whole thing up.
Didn't yesterday we go through the whole thing about this Torah and not the Surah? Back and forth. That was the whole day yesterday.
Yeah,
so according to what you just now said, that sounds like it's only Surah, according to Reb Shimon.
Well, Reb Shimon, yeah. Rav says that according to that, there's going to be a gzeira here, that household items are gonna be allowed to come out. But we had this before, where Rav said that when does Reb Shimon say that all courtyards are one? That's only if you didn't make an Eruv, because you can't get anything from your house into the courtyards. Therefore, you can carry from courtyard to courtyard because you're only carrying courtyard items. But once you can carry household items out, so then you have a problem. So here the problem is, according to this, is that you have household items that you're able to remove into the courtyard, which you probably did already because the Eruv was good until now. And now you can't carry to the other courtyards because of that Eruv. And now the Eruv went down. So that's our issue.
Rabbi Smith,
Yeah.
is it saying that we started out with 2 Rishuyos,
Yeah.
2 Rishusa Yachid, and they were joined together by this Erev. And now
And-
it gets ruined, so now we're treating
separated.
it like, separated. Now we're treating it like a Rishusa Rabim.
No,
Otherwise,
now
Where do you get
that
the
the wall
4
comes down, now it's becoming, instead of 2 Rishus HaYachid, it's becoming one big Rishus HaYachid.
So you should be able to carry entirely within it instead of
Yeah,
being
but it
limited to
becomes a
4
common
almost.
area. Oh, it becomes the common Rosh Hashanah. So originally it was too private. Well, because there was an Erev, it becomes private. And now when it's joined together and there's no Erev between both of them, it becomes the common area, which that's a Gzeira because of a Rosh Hashanah. The common private area is a Gzeira. Okay. Shmuel says, Zemetaltal adika mechitza, v'zemetaltal adika mechitza. Shmuel holds that you can carry until where the wall was. And Shmuel also holds that Reb Shimon says, afilu irvu. Even if there wasn't an Erev before, the Klei HaChatzer are allowed to go to the next courtyard anyway. It's only the Klei HaBayis, the household items that you take out of the house. Those can only go until the edge of where the wall was. And the courtyard items can go anywhere anyway, because Reb Shimon never made a Gzeira. Even if Irvu, it's still not a problem. That's how we learn. And Rashi spells it out on the top. Okay, now the Gemara says, this is common. The Gemara says that we have a halacha from Rav, and it's not that Rav actually said this, but we understood that this is what he holds based on a occurrence that happened. The Rav and Shmuel have a Yasvi Bahuchat. The Rav and Shmuel were in one courtyard. Nafal Guda the Beini. The wall fell down.
Good as a wall.
Yeah. Like we had like good asik, the wall goes up, good as well. Amalu Shmuel Shkula Glima Nagidaba. Shmuel says, take a glima, it's like a sheet or a talus, and make it into a wall, like hang it up over there on the clothesline. So Adrina Rav Lape, Rav turns around in disgust. Doesn't say that, I added that in, but that's what it means. That is like, I don't agree with that. So why? Rav held that you're not allowed to carry. If the wall falls down, you can't even carry it. You can't put it up. You can't. Okay. Amalu Shmuel. So Shmuel says, Ikapid Abba was a nickname for Rav, or maybe his actual name. And Rav was his nickname. If Abba has an issue with this, Shikulu Hemne or Hemniye V'Kutraba. Take Rav's gartel and use it to tie the sheet. This is, I guess, a joke. That Shmuel is saying that I'm so clear that this is right that you can use Rav's gartel itself to make sure that the sheet is tight. Well, Shmuel Lamaliha. Why does Shmuel even need the talus to be hung up, dividing the courtyard? We said that once it's mutter, because when Shabbos came in, it was mutter. It stays mutter. The whole thing is pointless. So he says, Ha'amar, Shmuel says, they can still carry in their own courtyards. So Gemara said, Shmuel, you're right. This is not a halachic issue. Shmuel just didn't want the neighbors looking in. It was like we were saying, like, what's the, Rebbitzin, we have guests. It's like, no, let's close this off. Whatever they wanted to do, it wasn't, whatever. Okay, for Rav, what does Rav hold? If Rav holds that you're not allowed to do this, why doesn't he tell Shmuel you're not allowed to do it? So the Gemara answers, Asri the Shmuel have. He wasn't the Rav in this area. Shmuel was the Rav in that area. Probably Nardai. Rav was the Rav in Surah. Shmuel was in Nardai. So Shmuel was the Rav. It was his territory. So he doesn't tell him that by a derabanan you can follow whichever. You don't have to tell him that it's a mistake. So my time at so why did he turn his face around if it's Shmuel's area? It says the name Shmuel Svirale Vahadabe Mishmait. Take that out. No one should say that he holds like Shmuel. So he wanted to make sure that no one says. See, if you have the parentheses, it looks like no one should say he holds like Shmuel and he was chayzer from his old psak, and he retracted. We don't say that. Okay. The new Mishnah. Chatzer shenifritza l'rishus harabim. Here's the courtyard, a courtyard that the wall that's open, that divides it from the rishus harabim, from the public area, falls down. This is a real issue. This is the mechitza coming down. Dr. Stein, this is our issue. If the mechitza comes down, so hamachnes, this is a courtyard. Hamachnes mitaycha l'rshus hayachid, omer rshus hayachid l'taycha chayav. Divrei Rebbe Lezer. Rebbe Lezer says that this courtyard that now loses its mechitza becomes a rishus harabim, to the extent that if another courtyard which is closed carries into this courtyard, it's as if they carried into rishus harabim. It's chayav.
Meaning from your house into this area.
Or from your house into this area. Okay. We're going to see exactly which part of this area is it really the whole thing becomes rishus harabim. Okay. We'll see. The Chacham say mitaycha l'rshus harabim, rshus harabim l'taycha is pater. If you carry from this area into rishus harabim, you're pater mipnei shu karmelis. It's only a karmelis. It's not a rishus harabim. It's a karmelis. So the Chachamim would also hold that if you carry from rishus hayachid into this area, you're also pater because it's also a karmelis. Why they switched and they didn't tell us that, I don't know. It's both of them are equally. Yitzis here. Okay. Now the Gemara, Rebbe Lezer mishum the nifritz l'rshus harabim havel l'rshus harabim. The Gemara has a question. What did we just say? According to Rebbe Lezer, because the wall fell down and it's open to rshus harabim, so therefore it becomes like a rshus harabim. Really, it becomes like a rshus harabim. The Gemara says, yeah, it does become like a rshus harabim. The Gemara is a little surprised by this. Why does it become a rshus harabim? I understand that it doesn't have the right walls, but that's not having the right walls is a karmelis. Like my front yard is open to the public area, but it's not a rshus harabim. They're not allowed to walk on my yard. It's just a karmelis. It's a private area that's missing a wall. Rebbe Lezer follows his reasoning, his shita. The Tanya was started in the Brayso. Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rebbe Lezer, Rabim Shabaru Derech Latzon Mashabaru Baru. If there is an area that the public started to walk on, it's acquired by the public. You had this Meitzah Shech Zika Berabim. Yeah. Very nice. So what this means, we're adding in details here that we were totally unaware of. What we're saying now is that somehow the public is now walking through this courtyard, and it becomes a rishus harabim because they're walking through it. That's what we're saying. Aini, is that really so? That's not so. This is only if they used to have a path through this. They didn't know where's the path. Is it over here? Is it over here? Over here, wherever the path is. And then the public started to walk on one area. So that becomes their path. But they never supposed to walk through here. What's going on? It's not that they just, wherever people walk, it's just going to be theirs. It's take over areas. Maybe that's the pshat over here. Maybe there's part of the story that we never heard. Maybe the story over here is that they really did have a path that's going through this field and they lost it. And now they're getting it back. No. Rav Chanina says that the area where the mechitza was, that even the Chachamim agree. There's a wall at the edge of the courtyard that collapsed. That area which is being walked on, the rabbim is now going to start walking on that area where the wall was. They're going to start walking on that. The Rabbanan are moida that's a rishus harabim, even though the Rabbanan say that the rest of the area is a karmelis. So in other words, only until the makim hamachitza is the machlekes. That means the whole courtyard until the makim hamachitza, that's the machlekes. The Chacham say it's a karmelis, and Rabbi Lezer says it's a rishus harabim. But the area where the rishus harabim is now walking on, everyone agrees. So what are you telling me? That it's Rabbi Eliezer Lishitase that holds that there's a path over there that they're walking on and now it becomes theirs. That part, even the Rabbanan are moida. We're talking about the rest of it. The Gemara adjusts this and says, Ema al makim mechitza machlekes. Say it differently. That's not what Rabbi Chanina said. That the path area is the machlekes. I'm sorry. that the whole area is the machlekes and the path area the Maida. Say it different. Say only the path area is the machlekes. This whole story over here, the Mishnah, just got limited down to the edge of the courtyard. Where Rabbi Eliezer says that the rabbim have a path over there, that they used to walk there before the fence was up or whatever, and now they're continuing to walk there, so it becomes theirs. And the Chachamim say that it's not theirs, that it's still considered a partial Rosh Hashanah, which we call a Karmelis, Rosh Hashanah without a wall. Iba Yesema, or another pshat, B'tzidi Rosh Hashanah K'miflagim. They're arguing about a very general concept, the sidewalk. The cars, which in those days was the wagons, they would travel in the road. Now, the wagons would bang into the side of the houses and would disturb the walls. So they would put up little things in the ground to make sure that the wagons don't bang into the walls. So when you go in between those little posts that are in the ground and the walls, that's called tzidi Rosh Hashanah. When the Rosh Hashanah is very crowded, people could walk there. The wagons can't go there, but people could walk there. So there's a machlekes here. The way we're suggesting that we have a machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. If a wall collapses, is it considered Rosh Hashanah or not? That's a general machlekes about tzidi Rosh Hashanah, because now the Rosh Hashanah is now going to start to enter into this courtyard a little bit to be able to walk if it's crowded. So the Rabbi Eliezer says tzidi Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah dam. Rabbi Eliezer says that the sides of Rosh Hashanah become a Rosh Hashanah public area, because sometimes they're going to walk there. Rabbanan Savri Tzidi Rosh Hashanah Lav Rosh Hashanah dam, and the Rabbanan say no.
So it's
It's not Rosh Hashanah. It's a Karmelis. The Gemara has a question. If that's your whole story, that it's a machlekes about Tzidi Rosh Hashanah, that's a general machlekes. Why do you give it to me, this general machlekes, in a scenario where a wall collapsed and they're walking? Why don't you just tell me they argue about Tzidi Rosh Hashanah, which that's the main point. That's in many other areas, not just this year. V'liflik b'tzidi Rosh Hashanah b'yalma. That's the aleph in the bach. The alma. Why don't they argue about every tzidi Rosh Hashanah? Why are they only arguing over here? If liga b'tzidi Rosh Hashanah b'alma, havramin kipli garabana la Rabbi Lazahani milech decha chifufei. Aval hecha deleka chifufei mamaydolei. If it would be a regular Rosh Hashanah that they're arguing about, then why did the Rabbanan say it's a Karmelis? Because you have those little pegs in the ground that stop the wagons from going. That's why the Rabbanan say it's a Karmelis. But over here, where you don't have those pegs, because the wall collapsed, for whatever reason, you don't have the pegs. So we would say that maybe the Rabbanan agreed to Rabbi Eliezer that it's a tzidi Rosh Hashanah, that it becomes a Rosh Hashanah. So Kamash Malan, that they say that it remains a Karmelis even without those pegs in the ground. Okay, all of this is cute until you look at the actual wording of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Hamachnes mitaycha l'Rosh Hayachid, Rosh Hashanah l'taycha, is chayiv. It says mitaycha. It's not talking about the edge. It's talking about the actual chatzar. V'hamitaycha ka'amar. But it says from inside. You said the whole thing, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the whole thing becomes a Rosh Hashanah. It's not just the edge where the people are going to walk. So the Gemara says like this. Aidi damar Rabbanan mitaycha. The Rabbanan, the Chachamim said that if you take from it into Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be pater. So because the Rabbanan said mitaycha, Amar Iyonami mitaycha, so he also says that mitaycha is going to be an issue. So we have an issue over here. First of all, why did the Rabbanan say it, and does he actually hold that? So the Rabbanan, what about the Rabbanan? Amar Rabbi Eliezer tzidi Rosh Hashanah umahadrele inu mitaycha. What are the Rabbanan doing? Rabbi Eliezer was only talking about the tzidi Rosh Hashanah, that's considered a Rosh Hashanah, which is the edge of the courtyard. And the Rabbanan say that if you carry from inside the courtyard, then you're pater to Rosh Hashanah, you're pater. But he wasn't even talking about the inside. So hachi kamrilei, Rabbanan Rabbi Eliezer. This is what the Rabbanan are telling Rabbi Eliezer. Milai kamaydes lan, don't you agree to us? Echad the tiltel mitaycha l'Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah l'taycha the pater mipnei she karmelis. Tzidei nami leishna. don't you agree that inside the courtyard is a Carmelis? Inside the courtyard is a private area. Don't you agree that it's a Carmelis? So therefore, if you agree that inside the courtyard is a Carmelis, and you carry from the Carmelis into Rosh Hashanah, your pater. So if you carry from the edge of it, they're trying to extend it, that it should also be a Carmelis. If you carry from the edge of it into the Rosh Hashanah, you should be pater as well. Rabbi Lezer says, Hassam like Kadarsi lo Rabbin. What's your comparison? The people aren't walking in the inside. Hacha Kadarsi lo Rabbin, but over here the people are walking. It's a Rosh Hashanah. Okay. What are we left with over here? That Rabbi Eliezer is talking only about the Tzidur Rosh Hashanah. So why do you say mitaycha? Because the Rabbanan said mitaycha. Why did the Rabbanan say mitaycha? Because the Rabbanan hold that the whole thing is a Carmelis. And they're trying to convince him that if you hold the middle as a Carmelis, why don't you hold the edge as a Carmelis? So that was their argument to him. So once the Rabbanan are talking about mitaycha, so he also says mitaycha. But it's a problem because it's not accurate, according to this. Yeah, it leaves us with a little bit of a question here. Why does it say mitaycha? I know for the Rabbanan it's accurate, but it's not accurate for Rabbi Lezer. The halacha is different. So mitaycha, I guess what it means is that mitaycha for Rabbi Lezer doesn't mean the same mitaycha that it does for the Rabbanan. Mitaycha means from the side of it, not from the entire part of it. I guess that's how we're going to have to read it. I don't know if you have a comment there in the translations. Okay, it's a new Mishnah here. How's this going to be explained? Well, I guess simply before we get into the Gemara, I have a Rosh Hashanah on both sides of this courtyard, and it gets breached. The courtyard gets breached on one side and on the other side. The wall gets broken down. So, but the Gemara is going to explain it later that it's actually a Rosh Hashanah that turns a corner, and the corner wall collapses. But that's the Gemara is going to explain that. Well, the corners collapse, which makes Shnei Richoseh. Okay, that's how the Gemara is going to learn it. The same thing would apply to a house that breaks down. Or a mavi, an alleyway that the beam or the lechi came down. That Shabbos it remains mutter because it was okay before Shabbos. And the next Shabbos it's a problem. Rabbi Yossi says no. Rabbi Yossi says, if it's mutter for that Shabbos, then it should remain mutter. If it's also for that Shabbos, if it's also for Lasad Lavei, then it's also for that Shabbos also. Now, this would fit with the way we were talking Rabbi Yossi's opinion. We were talking before that if the wall collapses, you need a new wall. Now, Rabbi Yossi over here is being machmer. You can read Rabbi Yossi two ways. Is he trying to be lenient or is he trying to be machmer? He's trying to be machmer. That's how it's explained. B'maya skinan. What are we dealing with? How big was the breach? Ilema be'eser. If it's 10 ames, a doorway could go up to 10 ames in a fence. So if the breach is 10 ames, so Maishna miruach achas damer pischahu, be'eser means it's less than 10 ames. If the breach is less than 10 ames or exactly 10 ames, within 10, if it's within 10 ames, so then what's the difference if it's one wall that got breached up to 10? On the other wall, on the opposite wall, it's two doors. What's the problem with two doors? One door was fine. I can have another door on the other side. Why is it considered that you can't carry there? You're allowed to have a door. You're allowed to have a door. So it's two doors. Ella, yeser meyeser. It must be that the breach was larger than 10. Now it's already not a door. The Gemara says, so if there's a breach in more than 10, then it's not a door. Why does it have to be on both sides? Rav says, the Eilam b'yeser, really it's only 10. That should be a regular doorway. And it shouldn't be a problem. But for some reason, now it's going to be a problem. Why? Because it broke by the corner. The pischa b'keren zavis layav the inshi, and on the corner, people don't make doors. the door can only be in the center. This is the huge problem in Eiruvin. If you have you're trying to make your Eruv for Sukkot or whatever, you want to make an Eruv, and there's a little gap. The gap is usually fine. It's usually not an issue unless it's in the corner. That's where the big problems come in, is in the corner.
Front door that swings open.
Front door, yeah, it's not a problem, right?
Building a huge house by a canal, they haven't learned this, so they put a door in the corner.
Oh, really?
That's what my wife is,
Uh-huh.
Old spiral staircase.
no, not that one, there's another one that's huge.
Uh-huh. Okay. The Chaim bias, and if it's Mishneh Ruchais, also a house. Same thing. The Gemara asks, you see, by a house you have a solution. Different than a courtyard. We had two cases, a courtyard and a house. The house, because it has a roof, it's supposed to have a roof, it has a halachic wall that comes down from the roof. The edge of the roof should halachically continue downward in imagination. A fictitious wall should come down. So the Gemara asks, we said it was breached from two walls. Why is one wall not enough to make it a problem? Because one wall we would say pitikr yard v'seisim. So it says mishnei ruchas nami lema pitikr yard v'seisim. So yeah, it's resolved anyway. Amri debei Rav mishmei de Rav. So the yeshiva of Rav says in the name of Rav, the two walls are on the corner. It's on the corner. And the roof is on a slant. And when the roof is on a slant, I don't say pitikr yard v'seisim. I only say with a flat roof. When I have a real lip of a tefach, I can say that it continues. But because it comes on a slant, it doesn't give me that lip of a tefach. I don't say pitikr yard v'seisim. It's only when it's like this, straight across, and then there's a thickness of it, then I would say that. The leka l'meimer pitikr yard v'seisim. Shmuel says, now Shmuel's statement here is about a courtyard. Afila b'yeser meyeser. He learns it different. We're going back. I know there were two dots in the middle of this, but really we had a question before by the courtyard. Why does it need to be from both sides? Even if it's one side, it's good enough. It's a problem already, right? So Shmuel says we're talking about afilu b'yeser meyeser. We're talking about that the breach was larger than 10 amos, and therefore it should be. It's not a door. It's not a door. So why is it a problem only when it's on two sides? Even one side is good enough. So it says mishum bias. It says two sides because two sides become a problem. You're right. Really, if it's a courtyard, one side is a problem because it's larger than 10 amos. We only said two sides because the house gets fixed if it's only on one side. Because I'll say pitikr yard v'seisim if it's on one side. The Gemara says 1 second. I can say pitikra, that the lip of the roof continues downward on two sides as well. If you say it for one, you could say it for two. V'su, and also, Shmuel doesn't hold of this anyway. Pitikra v'yitmar, we have a statement from Amirayim, if you have a covered area, a portico, a gazebo, in an open area. Rav says that I say pitikra. Shmuel says I don't say pitikra. So the whole way of resolving this doesn't fit with Shmuel. Shmuel doesn't say pitikra. Gemara says, oh, don't ask from that. Holy kasha. Ki lesle. Shmuel doesn't hold of pitikra yard v'seisim that the edge goes down. B'dalad. When you don't have all four walls and you're trying to make the entire gazebo walled in based on pitikra, because you don't have any walls here. Aval b'shalish, but once I have one wall, it's like, the Gemara says 1 second, mikol makam kashi, you didn't resolve it, because over here I do have two walls. So you should say pitikra. So what's the problem? So the Gemara answers, kadamri beirav mishmei derav k'genifratz b'keren zavis v'kiruv balachsan. How did we answer for Rav? We said that it's kiruv balachsan, that it was coming on an angle. What are we going to say for Shmuel? It's a complicated picture. Stop with this. But basically, what he's saying is that when the walls collapsed on the corner, the roof also collapsed. So let's say 5 amas, 5 amas collapsed of the roof. So that means I have to go in to this area 5 amas. Then it collapsed, so I go this way 5 amas. Then I have to go back 5 amas because it collapsed 5 amas over there, and then back 5. So it turns out that this like zigzag that collapsed from the roof also is like 4 walls are missing, because it is 4 walls. It's not on all 4 sides, but it's 4 walls right here, and Shmuel doesn't say Pitikar Yod B'Seisim. Okay, let's leave it over there.